Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the Beautiful Bag podcast. This week, I've got a guest that I think I've known for 5 years. It's got to be more, it's got to be that because she has children now. And I started following her on Instagram, and she was such a great inspiration. And we've never been able to connect to get this done. But then we met at the UOA conference a couple weeks ago, and we were just like, all right, we're making this happen. I'm obsessed with her. She is just an absolute amazing soul. So Megan Brown, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. And I'm equally obsessed with you. So
This is like girl crush.
oh, thank you for having me. I've wanted to do this for so long. And, it's just like time and chaos and craziness. So I'm really happy we could finally sit down and
Yeah,
chat.
I know. It's so good. It's so good. And I love your story. And I have loved watching you just evolve over. And again, it's fine. I found you through Instagram, but you've evolved over the last, I've got to say, it's got to be 5 years because I
I think
mean,
it has. It's been like 5 or 6 years, but that's one of my favorite things too, is just like being on social media for so long and then seeing these people that you like know from a distance, watching them grow and like seeing their lives. And then like people are having children and growing in their careers. And it's just so cool to see these people who, they're posting about having surgery and going through all these hardships and now they're flourishing. So yeah, that's one of my favorite things. But it's been, I think it's been like 5 or 6 years, but it's just something I love doing. And, you build this community and then you can't leave and you can't stop. So
yeah, it's so crazy. It's so crazy. And I want to dig into all of that. But why don't we start briefly? Because, everybody has a story of how we ended up in our ostomy bags. Let's tell the audience, how you ended up in your ostomy bag, but then you've done so much since. So I really want to dig into all of that. Right. So, let's walk through that story.
hey, my story is pretty lengthy. So I was I was diagnosed with Crohn's when I was 13, and it took about a year to actually get my diagnosis. When I was in 8th grade, I started having like so much diarrhea. And obviously my parents felt, okay, this isn't normal. We need to go to the doctor. So I went to the doctor, and first doctor told me, she's just a nervous child. There's nothing wrong with her. She is a nervous child. And thank God my parents were not okay with that answer. So obviously we got a second opinion, and it turns out after like months and months and months of testing and scopes, they decided that I had indeterminate Crohn's colitis, and I was like immediately hospitalized. By this point, I was a freshman in high school. I went to my freshman year for 1 month, and then I became so sick so fast. I had to be homeschooled. So I like really didn't get a freshman year of high school. I had to be homeschooled because I literally could not get out of bed. There were so many times where my parents found me on the bathroom floor, and like my dad had to physically pick me up, carry me to bed and put me into bed because I was so weak and I was losing weight and I had no energy. And I was in so much pain. I didn't want to eat because anytime I ate something, I was in this extreme pain. And so I was just going downhill so fast. And I started doing, infusion medications. I went on Remicade. Thankfully, that was my miracle drug at the time that sent me into remission after about a year. And so I was able to return to school for my sophomore year, but missing school, that was so hard. And I look back at it and it's emotional for me thinking about it now and like having my own kids, because this was before the age of like social media. This is when like Facebook came out. So there wasn't a lot of communication. And I think back then I had texting, but it was like 50 words. You got like 50 words a month of texting. It was really hard, by the way. But it was so hard because I'm from a small town. And so not being at school, everyone's wondering where you are and what you're doing. So of course, rumors started spreading about me that she's pregnant and her parents sent her away, or she died, and this crazy stuff. And meanwhile, I'm just like sitting at home in bed, so sick, hearing these things. And it was just heartbreaking. And another point I love to bring up too is just like how your body changes, especially as a young teenager. I was 13, 14 years old, and I was put on steroids. Everyone does steroids. And so I got the moon face, and I had the beautiful acne, and I gained all the water weight. And my brother was in college at the time. And I can remember he came home, and it was Christmas, and we went shopping. We were going clothes shopping for like spring, I guess, whatever. And I was in the dressing room and nothing fit. My normal size didn't fit. So my mom was bringing me like 2-3 times larger sizes than what I normally wore. And it just, it tore me up. And I can remember I was like sitting in the dressing room, and I just started crying because my body changed so fast. Yeah, like there's a lot of, mental health side of things and just stuff like that you go through. But it was really hard as a teenager dealing with those things and going through that. And so thankfully, Remicade sent me into remission. And then I kind of did like a homeopathic route for 5 years. And so that bought me 5 years, because my parents were to the point of, we don't really know about like putting these really harsh drugs in your body. Let's try homeopathic. And that helped me. I took a lot of like probiotics and supplements and stuff like that. And so that got me to college. In my sophomore year of college, I just went back downhill again, and I got really sick. And of course, I started trying all the drugs again, and nothing was working. I had formed antibodies to Remicade. I couldn't do Remicade anymore. And finally, Entyvio kind of started to stick. But, in the meantime, I met my husband, and then we ran off and we got married. But 8 months after we got married, I was actually kind of feeling fine, like as fine as you can feel for the first time. And I went in for a routine colonoscopy, and I was just thinking like, oh, like, I'm excited to hear, they're going to tell me everything looks good. And I found out that my colon was precancerous. So that's when I was pretty much given the decision, okay, do nothing and have routine cancer checks. They wanted to kind of do like colonoscopies every 3 months or so, to make sure there was like no progression. I could have part of my colon removed, but I would still have to have those routine cancer checks, or I could just one and done, have everything removed, and never have to worry about the threat or fear of cancer. So that's how I ended up with my ostomy bag.
Yeah, that is a story. That is a story, because you hear a lot of times, people with Crohn's colitis, the effect that it does end up having on your colon, and trying to live a life. And like you said, having that illness, that dis-ease, right? That going through all of that as a young child, it can be devastating. And you said there was a whole mental health part about that. So why don't we talk a little bit about that mental health part? Because, you went through it. How did you kind of get yourself through it as a child, and then even the mental health part about, it was your decision, you had the decision of, take the colon, because I don't want to deal with this. This is like something that, I can live with my ostomy. Or how was that feeling too? And what was your head like around that space?
So I think as a child, it probably sounds absolutely crazy, but I knew I was sick, but I don't think I realized how sick I was. I cancer had like never been thrown around. Like I knew I had Crohn's disease, but I don't think I realized how sick I was at the point. And so like, yeah, I was homeschooled, but I just didn't feel good, you know? And so I was able to kind of get through that. But I think too, like not realizing how sick I was, I kind of just had this mindset of like, okay, I'm going to get better, you know, because I'm like 13, 14. And I'm really lucky that I have extremely supportive parents and they were there for every step of it. And they always were like so positive about everything. Like, you know, as a parent, you don't want your child to see you kind of like breaking down, you know, and you don't want to scare your child. And so I never saw those behind the scenes, you know, breakdowns they had or just like fears that they had. They kept it really positive, and we always kind of like made a day of it or would have fun with it. You know, I had to do 8-hour long Remicade infusions once a month at the hospital. I was stuck there for 8 hours. That is a really long time. And so we would bring movies and we would bring games, and we just tried to like make it as positive as possible. And so I think that aspect helped me a lot. But truthfully, as much as I love social media, I almost feel like the fact that social media wasn't around really at that point also may have helped me, because I couldn't go on my phone and compare myself to other people. I couldn't go on my phone and, you know, see other people my age just like living their lives and doing these things. You know, I didn't really have that. I knew it was going on, but like I couldn't see it because I was stuck in bed or I was stuck at home all day so sick. So yeah, and I I always love to say after having surgery, I never knew, or I didn't realize how sick I actually was, because I forgot what it felt like to feel good. I thought that was normal. I was sick for so long. I thought that was normal. And I thought everyone just felt bad all the time. And so after going through surgery, I kind of realized, oh my God, that's not normal. It's not normal to feel exhausted. It's not normal to have this stomach pain. It's not normal to have diarrhea all the time. So that was like a really eye-opening thing for me. And then as far as like choosing my ostomy bag or making that decision, I was adamantly against it. No way in heck was I going to have an ostomy bag, because I was 24. And to be honest, yes, I was vain and I was more concerned about the aesthetics and how I looked. And it's mind blowing to me now to think about, I was willing to potentially deal with cancer so that my body could look a specific way.
I feel that. All right. I have to tell you, I feel that, because that was exactly what I went through. I mean, mind you, I was not 24, I was 44, right? So I was 20 years older than you. And I did fitness competitions and I was in a bikini all the time. And I worked out hard. I did all those things. And aesthetically, I was like, no way, like, no way, no way. And I had cancer. Like, it wasn't pre-cancer cells. I literally had cancer. And I was like, listen, if you go in there and you find out that this tumor, you go to take it out and it's going to cause me to have a bag, then don't do it. Sew me up and let me figure it out on my own. And that's when Dr. Ivaturi, who was actually at the conference we were at, yelled at me. And he said, listen, I haven't slept in 2 weeks thinking about your surgery. And my whole thing is, I don't want to put you into a bag. I don't want that. But my job is to save your life. So if you wake up from surgery and you're in a bag, it's because I need to save your life. And that's the only option I had. And it afterwards, it just was in my head, like, what are you, an idiot? Like, what is wrong with you where you would literally let cancer live in your body
It's
because you
crazy.
wanted to look a certain way?
I know, it's absolutely crazy. And I have like chills just like hearing you say that, knowing that I'm not the only crazy person who felt that way, but it is. And it's because ostomy bags have such a terrible stigma.
Mhm.
And like, I was 24, you were 40. There was no one that age with an ostomy bag. You only see older generations. And so I immediately thought, if I get an ostomy bag, my life is over,
Mhm.
and that's why I was like adamantly against it. But I also love the fact that you said that conversation with your surgeon, like he almost yelled at you, because my conversation with my surgeon is what changed my mind. And, it was kind of one of the same things, like, my job is to save your life. And I don't think he wants to go around giving everyone ostomy bags, but ultimately it was my decision. But what made me change my mind was I went in to meet with him to discuss like the pre-op stuff, and this was like 2 weeks before my scheduled surgery, and I had to give him my decision. And I went into that ready to just be like, nope, 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 it's not happening, not doing it. And he could sense that. And so he just had a really intimate conversation with me. And I just love telling people this, and it still gives me chills, even almost 7 years later. But he said to me, imagine being a young mom and finding out you have cancer. And that changed my life, because I've always wanted a family. When I was 13, 14, sick with Crohn's, like obviously that wasn't on my radar, but that's something my parents always advocated for. And like, for example, I don't even think my dad knows that I know this, because I've actually never said anything to him. But before I started Remicade, I went to the doctor and we're talking about Remicade and the process and what to expect. My dad pulled my doctor out of the room, trying to be private, though I could still hear them. And he was basically asking my doctor, okay, is this going to impact her ability to have kids one day? How is this going to play out? And I'm mortified, because I'm like 13, 14 years old, sitting in this room thinking like, oh my God, my dad's thinking about me having sex.
Right.
And talking to the doctor about that. And I'm just like, what the heck? But I'm so grateful that like he had that conversation. It's something I will always remember. And as I've grown, it did become really important for me to have children, And so having that conversation with my surgeon really put things into perspective. I was 24. We had just gotten married. I wasn't ready to have children then. A couple years later, yes, but just like preparing myself for my future, because I could not imagine having children and then finding out I had cancer. It put it into perspective that surgery was bigger than just me. It was for my future kids. It was for my husband. It was for like my parents and all of my family, everyone that I love, because what would happen if I didn't have surgery and then I ended up getting cancer and I wasn't there? So it's crazy. It's so crazy to like think about these things, sit back and reflect. It's a big decision, but I realized it was bigger than me at the time. And so that conversation with him is what really changed my mind. And I went into that appointment thinking, there is no way in heck I'm getting a bag. And I left with my surgery scheduled, ready to go.
Well, you know what it is too, from someone who was 44, who did have children, right? My children were older at that time. My daughter was just graduating college. My son was, just graduating high school. And even at that age, when it was just like, oh, there's no option, like I have to live, even though I was like, no, 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 with the bag, the cancer was, I have cancer doesn't have me, and I need to live. So it was this pull back and forth, like, do I do it? Do I not? Like, I have to do it, but I don't want it. I have to do it, but I don't want it. Like this vanity piece. And then it was, I was gaining weight through everything and all that stuff. But so I get what you're saying when your doctor said, what about your children someday? Because it was almost like I had to wake up and be like, you know what? I need to be here for my kids. I want to see them get married. I want to see them live their lives. I have to be at the wedding. I'm their best friend. You know what I mean? Like, they're mine. It's that feeling. And so, no, I'm so glad that the doctor had that conversation with you because, well, look what happens, right? Look what happens.
Now I'm here.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think too, like even just making that decision for my husband, because like I think if I was in his shoes, I couldn't imagine not having him, and so it's crazy and like scary to think about what would have happened if I didn't have that conversation and if I didn't go through with surgery. But obviously I did. And I'm so thankful that I did because like you said, here I am now doing all the things and living life, and I have children, and yeah, just busy as can be.
Yeah. And you are such an inspiration out there on social media, showing bag changes, showing what your stoma looks like. There's a lot of people who, need to see that. Like for me, I don't think I ever could show my stoma in public. I get very like, oh, like my friends are like, can I see it? And I'm like, well, if I open my bag, you're going to see poo, just letting you know what I mean? Like, so it's that thing about privacy, but I commend you for being out there and being so open with it. And you know what I love too is, so I saw you go through, I saw you after you had your surgery, right? Because you've had your stoma for how many years now?
Almost 7. It'll be 7 on September 1st.
Okay. And I'm 7.5. Right. So I was on social media. So you were probably one of the first people that I saw when you first had it. Cause you came out you didn't come like, hi, look at me right out of the gate, but pretty soon after, right?
I took a year
Mm-hmm.
because I didn't have Instagram. I literally still only had Facebook. This was in 2016. But I took a year to kind of like come out and show. And the reason I did it honestly was, well, there's a couple of reasons. One, because when I went through surgery, I didn't know anyone. I think this is so common. This is why most people go on social media. I didn't know anyone that had an ostomy, and I didn't have anyone to talk to before, during, or after surgery. So, in my WOCN, I basically saw her the day before I had surgery. She marked my stoma. I saw her in the hospital, and that was it. So I really did not have anyone. I had my parents, and when I went through surgery too, this is kind of something that we like just started discussing, or I really like just started sharing out in public, because I think there were a lot of feelings behind it previously. But when I went through surgery, my husband was actually deployed. So my husband was in the Army at the time, and I found out that my colon was precancerous, and 2 weeks later, he had to go on his first deployment, and he was gone for 9 months. And it was a fight to get him home for my surgery, but somehow we managed to get him home. He was allowed to come home for 5 days. So he came home the day before I had surgery, and then he left when I was still admitted. So I wasn't even discharged before he had to leave. But I think like I hadn't really shared that until recently. I think because I don't want to say like there were feelings of guilt, but there were just big feelings behind that. And so like on my husband's behalf, and maybe upset that like he felt like he couldn't be there more, but this was his job. And when
men want to provide and protect, regardless
exactly.
of their age, regardless of anything else. That is in their minds, that's their role. That's how they are. They want to provide for their family, their loved ones, and they want to protect their family and their loved ones. And that's probably what his struggle was when he was going through that. I know that was what John's struggle was.
Exactly. And so I ended up having to move home with my parents. And so he went back on his deployment and he had like 8 months left. So I was at home recovering with my parents. I didn't have anyone to talk to. I didn't know anyone. And so, yeah, that's really why I went on social media, because I wanted other people to have that person. I didn't want anyone to go through this feeling how I felt. And like, even back then, first thing I did when I heard ostomy, I Googled and I searched for blogs and I found one blog, but it was like, this is it. And
Yeah.
so that's why I started going on social media. And then the other reason is it was really this healing thing for me. And I think it probably sounds nuts, but putting myself out there and showing my ostomy bag, it felt like this space where I don't know these people.
Mm-hmm.
I'm never going to meet these people, but like, ah, ha, ha, look, we actually did meet.
Hi. How you doing?
And it was like, I don't know these people. I'm never going to meet these people. It doesn't matter what these people think.
Mm-hmm.
I am just going to put myself out there. But I actually got a positive response, which was kind of surprising. So I just kept doing it. And people were so nice and they were so kind and they were so supportive, and people were wanting to learn more. And what is this thing? What is a stoma? What is an ostomy? And so it kind of just snowballed and grew, and I started sharing more. And that actually was this healing thing for me, because it really allowed me to accept my body and kind of appreciate my body. And so it gave me body confidence, taking pictures and putting them on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
It made me feel accepted. So, I did this to kind of help other people. That's what I wanted to do. But it actually really helped me too. So it's kind of cool to think about.
Yeah, it's really cool to think about. And it's really cool to think about all the people. Now, I mean, I did a fitness competition with my ostomy bag after, right? As a proof, like, yeah, it was a year and a half later. My body wasn't exactly the way I wanted it from a fit perspective, but that wasn't the purpose of it. It was just, let me get on stage, let me put the bag on, let me show my bag, I'll bling it all out. And this is my life now. And, walking out on stage and opening the wings of the costume and everybody standing up and clapping and screaming and all that stuff. And I was like, just don't fall in your stripper shoes. Just don't fall in your stripper shoes. That was healing, right? Talking about it, taking your pictures and putting it out there on social media. As you said, that was healing. I felt that healing myself. People really are curious. People want to understand, and you become such an inspiration, not just to people in ostomies, but to people outside of ostomies. Because there is, in the US alone, there's 750,000 to 1 million people in an ostomy in the US, right?
You would never know.
No.
And that's what's crazy, because like before going to the UOAA conference, I knowingly had met one other ostomate.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but then I think when I go to my GI doctor sitting in the waiting room, I'm like, okay, I wonder how many of these people have ostomies sitting in here. But it's crazy. You'd never know that many people have them.
No, you don't. And nobody wants to talk about it because of the stigma that has been around for so long. And I think just in the last 5-6 years, I think since, you've been putting your stuff out there, I've been putting my stuff out there, all the other ostomates that we know are really putting their stuff out there. There was one girl from Canada who actually interviewed Jessica Grossman. She was an actress, and she was in a bikini, and she put a picture of herself just in a blog, and someone found that and sent that to me. You know what I mean? So it was just like that. Oh, okay. There is awareness, like people are starting to come out with it. And I think and I love, over the years, more and more of us have come out and really start speaking out. Like, here's how you can still live your life to the fullest, because one, you're healthy because you're not sick and in pain anymore and all that other stuff. But here's how you can go and live your life. Yes, there's complications that come with certain things. Some people have leaks and skin irritations and all that stuff, but you're living your life. Now you turned around and have had 2 children after your ostomy surgery. So like, what was that like for you?
Well, I felt like I tell everyone I felt like the guinea pig for myself because I didn't know anyone who had ever been pregnant with an ostomy, and like, there wasn't information out there. And I hate that there is such little research on this topic because there's so many women out there who want to know, and men too, like, how could this impact my fertility, or what is pregnancy going to be like? What can I expect? It's almost like going in blind to this, but I was really, really lucky. I had 2 really easy pregnancies and 2 great experiences because, of course, I read the blogs and I read the horror stories. But yeah, it was wonderful. And I am one of those wild people who loves to be pregnant because I don't get morning sickness. And so with our daughter, it was a question of, can I even get pregnant? Because these conversations were never had, with my doctor or my WOCN. It was, okay, I have an ostomy bag. Is this going to impact my fertility? Can I even have a baby? Can I even get pregnant? And so we tried for like a year and a half, and nothing was happening. So my husband had to go on his second deployment. So I thought, okay, while he's gone, I'm going to be proactive and I'm going to go to a fertility clinic just to find out what's going on so that when he gets back, we can just, head on
Done.
right, be done. And so I went, and it was very eye-opening. Anyone who is like struggling with this or just has questions, go to a fertility clinic. I learned so much about my body and myself. My prior knowledge was like high school health class, and I'm from Virginia, the South, where, we don't talk about a lot of these things. And so, yeah, I learned so much going to the fertility doctor, but, my situation, it was totally hormonal. It was nothing to do with my ostomy bag. So with our daughter, I ended up going on Clomid. We got pregnant the very first round, and it was wonderful. I think with both pregnancies, the biggest things I dealt with was my stoma size changing. I wear convex wafers, and obviously when your belly starts growing, those aren't going to work. So I had to switch to flat wafers. But the stoma size too, I love the moldable wafers because since my stoma was growing so much, I didn't have to constantly like cut, or I didn't have to, call and change my like cut to fit size. It was easy to just like roll these wafers. Yeah, so basically stoma size, I had to switch from convex to flat. With my first pregnancy, I thought for sure I was going to have a C-section because that's what everyone else was doing. And so I went in to meet my doctor, and I'm so lucky I had the best obstetrician. She sat me down and we devised a plan. And I said, oh, like, I'm pretty sure I'm going to have a C-section. And she looked at me and she said, no, you're not. And I was like, what are you talking about? Everyone's having a C-section. I have an ostomy and I don't have a rectum. That was my big reason for thinking I was going to have a C-section, because
you couldn't push, right?
Yes. And I was really concerned about scar tissue. And I thought, oh my gosh, what if I deliver, sorry. What if I deliver vaginally and I tear? Then it's going to be like going through Barbie butt recovery with a newborn. And so my doctor, she like checked me out to make sure I could still push, and I could, because I still have muscle down there. I could still push and I could still bear down. And she was like, no, you can have a vaginal delivery. You are perfectly fine. You can do this. So we devised a plan to basically do a lateral episiotomy. So they cut a tiny, tiny bit. If it looked like I was going to tear, they were going to cut a tiny, tiny bit just to relieve that. And that's exactly what happened. They did the lateral episiotomy. I didn't tear at all. I was able to have both of my children vaginally, and my recovery was super easy. I think postpartum, those like first 2 weeks postpartum when you're like
I'm
so
exhausted.
hormonal and it's horrible because your body is producing all of these extra hormones for the baby. And once you have the baby, your body's having to like flush them out and readjust. And so after having both of my kids postpartum, my hormones actually impacted my skin. So the bags that I had been wearing for years and years and years, my tried and true, I suddenly was like reacting to them. So honestly, throughout the entire pregnancy journey and like postpartum, this was the worst thing because I had a newborn baby, but my skin was insane. My peristomal skin, I was like reacting to these. And I'm thinking like, oh my God, I do not have the capacity to order all of these samples and find a new system. I have a newborn and I have a newborn with a toddler. And so thankfully, it was just so weird. After like 2 weeks, everything calmed down and my skin went back to normal and I could resume wearing my normal system. But it's just weird little things like that that you don't even think of, or that like there's not awareness brought of. But yeah, both of my pregnancies were super easy. My babies never kicked my stoma, thankfully, because I've heard that can be really painful. Ultrasounds were always really fun because it was always like, all right, is this going to be the day where we actually get to see our baby? Because they obviously can't scan where your stoma is.
Right.
So if baby's hiding behind your stoma or behind your bag, you're not going to get to see baby's face. You're not going to get to see baby that day. So, yeah, it was great. Honestly, like, I think, like I said, I felt like the guinea pig for myself. But after going through it once, I was like, okay, I got this. I got the hang of this. And first time too, I requested to be high risk because I wasn't sure how this was going to go. I still have Crohn's disease. And actually too, they said the biggest risk wasn't my ostomy. It was having Crohn's. Having Crohn's was the biggest risk with the pregnancy. And so I think, in addition, there is that idea that, okay, if you're pregnant with Crohn's, it could send you into remission or it could bring you out. And ever since I had surgery, I've been in remission. So there was kind of the fear of like, okay, am I going to fall out of remission being pregnant? Thankfully, I did not. But yeah, there's like pregnancy. It's like this, it's a big thing. We could talk about just the pregnancy aspect for hours because there's just nothing out there and no one talks about it. And it drives me crazy. And so, we're on the fence about a third. Some days, yes, we want a third, but then there's days that are hard. We're like, oh my gosh, how can we do a third?
Like, how can we have a third child, right?
Yes. But yeah, if we have a third, I am like, okay, I am documenting like every aspect of this because people need to know, people need to know what to expect and how their body can change and what to talk to their doctors about. And I think I didn't know what to even ask my doctor. I didn't know what to talk to my doctor about. I didn't know what to expect. But also, like, my doctors, I had a really good doctor with our daughter. With our son, I went in, I was giving my background the very first appointment, and they said, oh, if you hadn't told us that you delivered vaginally, we were going to do a C-section. So there's just,
You have to have those
there's not
conversations.
a
I think
lot.
there's a lot of stuff is, the self advocacy, right? But you need to
Yes.
know what to advocate advocate for. So,
Exactly.
Megan, you are the person that, has been through this. So, and you're the one that can share that story. You're the one that can bring the awareness around it. I think I only have known one other person so far that has had a child with an ostomy,
Yeah.
like that I've
Yeah.
known, that I've seen, that have talked about it. So,
Mm-hmm.
bringing that awareness out there, that you have done. And if you do have a third, like bringing it out aware even more than what's already been out there is going to be huge for this community.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But the, self-advocacy, that's the biggest thing. And I can't stress that enough. And I always tell people, just talk to your doctor. If you don't feel comfortable with your doctor, get a different doctor,
Mhm.
because you need to advocate for yourself, but you're also advocating for your child, which
Mhm.
is like weird to think because you're pregnant and like physically you can't hold them in your arms yet, but they're here. They're in your
Mhm.
stomach. If you're
Mhm.
advocating for yourself, you need to advocate for your child as well. And so I always tell people, just go talk to your doctor and form that plan. Obviously, giving birth, it does not always go according to plan. There are always surprises, but just having like a thought process of, okay, this is our plan. This is like, what we're going to do if everything goes a specific way. I think that made me feel a lot better, but
Mhm.
also, doctors don't see doctors don't see women with ostomies delivering babies every day. So
Right.
forming that plan and like speaking with your doctor, I think makes all parties feel better.
Something, and that's great. And and like you said earlier, I mean, you don't know, even in a regular birth, like without an
Hmm.
ostomy, you don't know how that pregnancy is going to go. I mean, my daughter, I
Hmm.
had vaginally. I mean, I was 21 when I had her, right? So I had her vaginally, and then my son went in. I went into the doctors, and they're like, "Oh, your water just broke," as they were checking me, right? And they were like, well, he's butt first, so it's C-section. You know what I mean? Like, here it is.
Oh,
Like, this is what's
yes.
happening. I'm like, okay, butt first, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so you just don't know in general anyways. But again, like you said, not many people, not many doctors are dealing with a woman in an ostomy,
Hmm.
giving birth. And you we're able to do it. You're able to do it. You're able to have children. And like that's not just you, but like everybody can have a child
Yes.
when you have your ostomy. I mean, sometimes there's, complications or whatnot, or reasons why you can't, but the stoma is not going to stop it.
No, not at all. And, both of my pregnancies, I had two healthy pregnancies, two healthy deliveries, both carried to full term. My son was actually born on his due date. So obviously, like you said, it's different for everyone, but having a stoma is not going to stop you from having a healthy experience.
Exactly, exactly,
Mhm.
exactly. So, oh my gosh, I could talk to you forever and ever and ever. So we're definitely going to have to
I
do a
know.
round two with Megan, because
I
there's so much
know.
more that we can
I'm just
chat
a
about.
chatterbox
No, I
too.
love it. I
Sorry.
love it. No, 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 no. This has been, you've shared so much important stuff. And so for this episode, I want to leave it with that, because we talked about, what you went through, and then we talked about the pregnancies and advocating for yourself. But I
Mhm.
definitely need to have you back on again, because I want to talk about
Yes.
like social media and presenting yourself out there and how you do it and all that stuff,
Mhm.
because that is really important too.
Yes.
So, I really want to thank you so much for being with us this week. But if you were to leave our audience with one thing, what would that one thing be?
My gosh, this is the hardest question. People always ask me this and I don't know. Um, I think so from my experience, mindset, your mindset can honestly change your life. And what I mean by that is I was adamantly against having an ostomy bag. I fell into this deep tunnel of like, I don't want to say depression because it was not diagnosed depression, but I was just so upset and I was angry and I was scared and, I was crying and I just felt like I was in this deep tunnel and I was never going to get out when I had to kind of make that decision of, am I going to get an ostomy? And then thinking about what my life would be like with an ostomy. And then, having that conversation with my surgeon, it changed my mind. And then I just decided I am so sick and tired of feeling bad for myself. I'm sick and tired of feeling just stuck. I'm sick and tired of feeling like I'm in this tunnel. I want to take this as my second chance and make it as positive as I can. I just want to put a positive spin on this. And it was like my second chance at life. And I realized that is easier for some people to do. Not everyone, it is hard. Not everyone can just say, okay, I'm doing this. But mindset can absolutely change your life. And adopting that positive mindset and, choosing to see the glass half full has helped me immensely. And I honestly think I tell people positivity is one of my biggest coping mechanisms. That's how I cope with it, through positivity. And that's what works for me. It may not work for everyone, but just think about your mindset and the life you want to live and how you want to live it. And, go from there. Yeah, mindset can absolutely change your life for the better if you choose a positive mindset.
Okay. Something, and I agree. It's, I think, why we connect so much, right? And why certain people connect with each other so much. Cause it is that it's not like we're happy all the time and we're positive all the time. I mean, we have those moments, those days where we're kicking the door and crying in the closet and all those things. However, it's okay. I'm going to allow myself to go feel this. And then I'm going to come back, because that is not everything in life.
Exactly. And I think that was my biggest thing. Before having surgery, I always stressed over the little things. I was like a perfectionist, and, I would get so upset if even the smallest things didn't go my way. But going through surgery made me realize that is not important. Like when you're dealing with like potential life or death, or, something like that, it really puts things into perspective. And it made me realize that's not important. Like, let's just be happy and let's just have fun and let's just enjoy life. And, just like you said, obviously I still get upset and I still have hard times. Yes, I do still deal with, the occasional leak or the occasional skin irritation, but I know I'm going to be living with this for the rest of my life. So I don't let that stuff get me down. You deal with it, you feel it, you bounce back, and you just keep going.
That is something that we can all take into our lives every day, right? Every day. So Megan, I just want to thank you again so much for being here with us this week. I mean, thank you for sharing and being so open. I know that our listeners are going to get a lot out of this one. So
thank you for having me. It was so much fun. And yes, just let me know when I can come back and talk everyone's ear off.
We are definitely going to have that happen. Definitely going to have that happen.